rain hammered against the tinted windows of the black Rolls-Royce as billionaire Kwame Afolabi stared blankly ahead, his mind still haunted by the memory of his late wife's final breath. It had been a year since she passed, yet her absence clung to him like a shadow he could never outrun. The car slowed at a crowded roadside market, and just as Kwame lifted his eyes, his entire world stopped. A young poor boy skin smeared with dust, clothes torn from struggle, darted between stalls. But it wasn't his poverty that struck Kwame like a punch to the chest. It was the boy's eyes, the exact shade, the exact shape, the same piercing gentleness Kwame saw every morning in his own son. His breath hitched, his hands trembled. "Impossible," he whispered. But the longer he stared, the harder his heart pounded, until terror twisted inside him. What if the boy wasn't just a coincidence? What if his late wife had hidden something far more devastating than her death? Before we dive deeper, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. And if you enjoy powerful African folktale dramas, feel free to subscribe so you never miss the next story. Kwame couldn't breathe. Even after the boy vanished into the crowd, his heartbeat refused to slow. He pressed a hand to his chest, as if trying to steady the storm raging inside him. His driver, Musa, glanced at him through the rearview mirror. "Sir, are you all right?" Kwame didn't answer. He pushed the door open and stepped out into the chaotic marketplace, ignoring the startled murmurs from people who recognized the billionaire immediately. Vendors paused mid-shout. Children froze with half-eaten puff-puff in their hands. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Kwame scanned the sea of faces, searching for the boy with those impossible eyes. "Kwame, please, your security," Musa called after him. But Kwame didn't listen. He moved through the crowd with urgency, the rain softening to a mist that did nothing to cool the heat burning beneath his skin. Every step felt heavy, as if he were walking deeper into a truth he was never meant to discover. Then he saw him. The boy was crouched beside a wooden crate of oranges, helping an elderly vendor arrange the fallen fruits. He worked quickly, mechanically, like someone used to doing more than his tiny hands should ever be responsible for. A thin scar crossed his left eyebrow, a detail that hit Kwame harder than it should have. His late wife, Amal, had a scar in nearly the same place. Kwame swallowed hard before taking a step closer, but the boy abruptly stiffened, his head lifted slightly, as though sensing danger. His gaze flicked toward Kwame, and in an instant, fear widened his eyes. The boy grabbed a ragged cloth sack and bolted. "Wait!" Kwame shouted, chasing after him. The boy weaved through bodies with the ease of someone who had been running his whole life. Kwame struggled to keep up, his Italian shoes slipping on the muddy ground. Musa yelled for security, but the billionaire didn't stop. He couldn't. Not when those eyes were etched in his mind like a ghost refusing to fade. The boy darted into a narrow alleyway between two metal containers. Kwame followed, breath burning in his chest. The alley smelled of rust and rainwater. A stray dog barked as they sped past. "Please stop, I just want to talk," Kwame shouted. But the boy didn't stop. He sprinted until he reached a row of worn-out shacks, their roofs patched with old tarpaulins, their walls leaning like tired bones. Finally, the boy slipped inside one of the shacks and slammed the cloth curtain shut. Kwame reached the doorway moments later. His pulse thundered. He hesitated, unsure whether stepping in would terrify the child more. Before he could decide, a woman's voice came from inside, shaky, breathless. "Don't come near him, please." Kwame froze. A woman stepped out of the shadows, blocking the doorway with her body. She couldn't have been more than 30. Despite the exhaustion clouding her face, she held herself with a quiet strength. Her clothes were faded, her hair tied in a rough bun, her hands trembling ever so slightly. "Are you his mother?" Kwame asked, struggling to steady his voice. The woman's eyes flickered with fear. "His name is Ko, and yes, I am. Kwame glanced at the thin cloth curtain behind her, where he could see the silhouette of the boy huddled against the wall. His chest tightened. I mean him no harm, he said. I saw him in the market. His eyes. He paused, unsure how to finish the sentence without sounding like a madman. The woman squared her shoulders. People stare at us all the time. It's nothing new. No, Kwame whispered. This is different. She didn't reply, but the tension in her jaw betrayed her unease. Something in her eyes, guilt, fear, pain shifted the air between them. Kwame softened his tone. What is your name? Zuri, she answered reluctantly. Zuri, he repeated, letting the name settle. Why did your son run when he saw me? Zuri looked down. Because life has taught him to run from men who look like they want something. Kwame opened his mouth to respond, but a harsh cough erupted behind the curtain. The boy wheezed, the sound sharp and painful. Zuri spun around instantly, panic flooding her face. Ko, she rushed inside. Kwame followed instinctively, stopping at the threshold. The shack was dim, lit only by a cracked oil lamp. The air smelled of damp wood and illness. Ko was curled on a thin mat, clutching his chest as he coughed violently. His small body trembled with every breath. Zuri knelt beside him, rubbing his back. Shh, shh, breathe slowly, my child. Kwame's throat tightened. No child should sound like that. He stepped forward. He needs a doctor. Zuri shot him a glare. We don't need your help. You clearly do, Kwame said firmly. This boy is sick, and you can't pretend he isn't. Zuri's lips quivered just for a moment before she hid it behind a mask of defiance. I have taken care of him for 8 years, she whispered. You don't know anything about us. Then let me, Kwame replied. Let me help him, please. Zuri lowered her gaze to the boy, whose breathing was still uneven. Her hand trembled as she brushed sweat from his forehead. For a long moment she said nothing. Then very quietly, we can't afford a hospital. I'm not asking you to pay, Kwame said. Just let me get him the care he needs. Zuri's jaw tightened. Why? Why do you care? Because he looks like my son. Because he has my wife's scar. Because something about him is tearing open a wound I thought had healed. Kwame's voice softened. Because no child deserves to suffer. Zuri closed her eyes. Ko coughed again, weaker this time. Finally, she whispered, Fine, but I go with him. Everywhere. Of course, Kwame said. Musa and the security team arrived outside the shack just as Kwame lifted Ko gently into his arms. The boy was shockingly light, like someone who had spent his life eating only enough to survive. Ko's head rested weakly on Kwame's shoulder. For a moment, Kwame felt a jolt of something painful and strange, an emotion he couldn't name. Zuri walked beside them, gripping Ko's knapsack with white-knuckled hands. As they stepped out into the open, villagers murmured in confusion. Some bowed respectfully, others whispered behind their palms. But Kwame didn't care. His focus was on the frail child breathing unevenly against him. When they reached the car, Zuri hesitated, staring at the luxury vehicle as though it were another world entirely. Kwame opened the door and looked at her gently. Get in. She swallowed hard, then climbed inside. As the Rolls-Royce pulled away from the market, Zuri kept her arms wrapped around Ko, eyes fixed on the passing streets. Kwame sat opposite them, unable to tear his gaze away from the child. Those eyes, that scar, the timing. A storm of dread churned in his chest. What if the boy wasn't just a resemblance? What if this child was the key to a secret Amala took to her grave? And what if the truth was far more devastating than he was prepared to face? The drive to the hospital felt like a journey through 2 different worlds. Outside the tinted glass, Lagos rushed past bustling sidewalks, honking Danfo buses, vendors balancing trays on their heads, neon signs flickering through the early evening haze. Inside the car, a heavy, suffocating silence settled over the three passengers. Kwame sat rigidly, gaze fixed on the small boy leaning against Zuri's chest. Keo's breathing was shallow, each inhale a struggle. His thin fingers gripped the fabric of his mother's sleeve as if anchoring himself to consciousness. Zuri clutched him tightly, her eyes darting between him and the unfamiliar luxury around her. She kept her shoulders tense, her expression guarded, as though expecting the world to snatch her son from her at any moment. Kwame noticed. "You don't have to be afraid," he said gently. Zuri didn't look up. "You don't know me. You don't know us. Fear is the only thing that keeps us alive." Her voice carried a mixture of defiance and sorrow, years of hardship compressed into a single sentence. Kwame exhaled slowly. "I'm not your enemy. I only want to help the boy." Zuri finally lifted her eyes. There was exhaustion in them, but also something else. A flicker of recognition, a shadow of guilt. Kwame couldn't quite place it. "What do you want from us?" she asked. No rich man helps strangers without a reason. Kwame hesitated. He wasn't ready to confess the truth, that the boy looked like he had stepped out of his own family portrait, that seeing Keo had ripped open a wound he had spent months trying to bury, that those eyes had shaken him to his core. "I just want him safe," Kwame said instead. Zuri studied him, unsure whether to believe him. Before either could speak again, Keo coughed a brutal, rattling sound that jolted Zuri into action. She bent over him, rubbing his back with trembling hands. "It's okay, my baby. Breathe slowly. Stay with me," she whispered in panic. Kwame leaned forward, voice steady. "We're almost there." Moments later, the car glided to a stop at the hospital entrance. Nurses rushed to open the door when they recognized Kwame Afolabi, one of the nation's most influential philanthropists. But instead of stepping out with the confident composure they were used to, Kwame moved quickly, urgency replacing every hint of pride. "Get a pediatric specialist immediately," he ordered. "The boy is struggling to breathe." The nurses nodded and gently took Keo from Zuri's arms. She tried to follow, but one nurse stopped her. "Ma'am, please wait here." "No," Zuri cried, jerking forward. "He needs me." Kwame stepped in. "She goes with him. No exceptions." The nurse hesitated only a second before relenting. "Yes, sir." Zuri shot him a startled glance, one that held both suspicion and gratitude, before hurrying after her son. Kwame followed closely behind. Inside the examination room, the doctor worked swiftly, placing an oxygen mask over Keo's face. Machines beeped to life. Zuri stood beside the bed, hands clasped, tears streaming down her cheeks as she watched her son's chest rise and fall with mechanical assistance. "How long has he been coughing like this?" the doctor asked. Zuri wiped her face. "A few weeks, maybe more. I tried herbs, teas, everything I could afford. He said he was fine. I didn't want to take him to the hospital unless I had no choice." Kwame felt a sharp stab in his chest. Poverty didn't just steal, comfort it stole. Time, options, hope. The doctor nodded, expression serious. "He's severely anemic and dehydrated, and his lungs show signs of infection, possibly pneumonia. We need tests." Zuri clutched the bedsheet as though it were the only thing holding her together. "Is he in danger?" The doctor glanced at the machines, then back at her. "He's stable now, but he needs treatment immediately." Kwame stepped closer. "He will get everything he needs. Money is not an issue." The doctor nodded and left the room to prepare the necessary tests. Silence fell again. For a moment, the only sound was the hiss of oxygen flowing into the mask over Keo's small face. Zuri sank into a chair beside the bed, her hands covering her eyes. Her shoulders shook. Kwame watched her, feeling something unusual twist inside him. Pity wasn't the right word. It was deeper, something pulling him toward a truth he didn't yet understand. "Zuri," he said softly. She didn't answer. "You've done your best," he continued. "You fought for him. That matters." Her hands dropped slowly, revealing eyes red with tears. "You don't know what I've done," she whispered. "You don't know anything." "Then tell me," Kwame urged. Zuri stared at him. Every emotion, fear, anger, guilt, flickered in her gaze. "I don't owe you anything," she snapped suddenly. "I didn't ask for your help." "No," Kwame replied calmly, "but your son needs it." Zuri's expression faltered. Just then, a soft knock broke the tension. A nurse stepped inside. "Sir, please follow me. We need some information for the patient's file." Kwame nodded and followed her out into the hallway. But instead of paperwork, he found two of his security men waiting anxiously. "Sir," one whispered, "we found something." Kwame frowned. "What?" The guard handed him a small, worn-out document. A hospital card. On it was Zuri's name and a second name beneath it. Mother, Zuri Langa. Guardian, Amale Afolabi. Kwame's heart nearly stopped. His wife's name, printed neatly beneath Zuri's, dated 8 years ago. The guard continued in a low voice. It was inside the shack, hidden under the mattress. Kwame stared at the card as if it were burning him. Memories flooded his mind. Nights his wife cried alone. Days she seemed distant. Moments she tried to tell him something but backed out. The ache in his chest grew heavier. Amale had known this boy, guarded him, protected him. Why? Kwame swallowed hard. "Don't tell anyone yet." "Yes, sir." As the guards walked away, Kwame gripped the card tightly. His wife's signature stared back at him like a whisper from the grave. He turned and went back inside the room. Zuri looked up immediately, as if sensing something had changed. "You knew my wife," Kwame said quietly. Zuri's entire body froze. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Her eyes darted toward the hospital card sticking slightly from his hand. She swallowed hard. I can explain," she whispered. "Then explain," Kwame said, stepping closer, voice trembling with a mixture of fear and anger. Zuri shook her head. "Not here. Not now. Not while he's sick." Kwame exhaled sharply. "This is not something you can keep hiding." Zuri rose to her feet, trembling. "I promised her," Kwame stiffened. "Promised who?" Zuri's eyes glistened. "Amale." Silence slammed into the room like thunder. Zuri clasped her hands together, voice cracking. "Before she died, she made me promise to protect him, to keep him away from danger, away from anyone who might use him or question where he came from." Kwame's breath caught in his throat. Where he came from? He stepped closer. "Zuri, tell me the truth. Tell me who this boy is." Zuri's tears spilled onto her cheeks as she shook her head helplessly. "I can't," she whispered. "Not yet." Kwame's voice was almost a plea. "He looks like my son. He looks like Amale. And now this," he held up the hospital card. "This proves she knew him. Why? Tell me." Zuri wrapped her arms around herself. "If I tell you now, everything will break. Everything." Kwame stared at her, this woman who seemed to hold the missing pieces of a puzzle he didn't know existed. Before he could speak again, Ko whimpered weakly from the bed. Zuri rushed back to him, and Kwame stood there, torn between fury and fear, staring at the child who might very well be the key to unraveling every lie his marriage had been built upon. Kwame sat in the corner of the hospital room, elbows on his knees, hands clasped tightly together as he watched Zuri tend to the boy. Every now and then, Ko's breathing steadied, only to turn shallow again moments later. The steady beep of the monitors created a tense rhythm in the room, as if counting down to the moment the truth could no longer be contained. Zuri sat on the edge of the bed, stroking Ko's hair with trembling fingers. Her whole body leaned protectively toward him, as though shielding him from the world, including Kwame himself. The hospital card burned hot in Kwame's pocket. Amale's name on it kept cutting into his thoughts like a blade. Finally, unable to endure the silence, Kwame spoke. "Zuri, you said you promised my wife to protect him. What did she ask you to protect him from?" Zuri didn't look up. Her fingers moved gently through Ko's curls, brushing dust off his forehead, smoothing the crease between his brows. She looked like a mother used to soothe in fear, even if that fear was never hers to begin with. "I can't tell you yet," she murmured. "You keep saying that." Kwame's voice tightened. "But every time you speak, I hear another lie." Zuri flinched. She kept her gaze fixed on the boy. Kwame rose slowly, his footsteps quiet against the tiled floor as he approached the bed. When he stood beside her, Zuri stiffened visibly. "I am not your enemy," he said, calmer this time. "But this situation is tearing open wounds I thought I had buried with my wife." At the mention of Amale, Zuri's eyes flickered with raw pain that didn't belong to a stranger. Kwame's stomach twisted. "Tell me how you knew my wife." Zuri let out a long, shuddering breath, then stood abruptly and walked toward the window. She stared out at the city lights flickering beyond the hospital grounds. "When I met Amale," she began slowly, "I was a trainee nurse. I was in my final month at the hospital." Kwame blinked. His wife had never mentioned any connection to medical staff. Zuri continued, voice soft but laced with memory. "There was an emergency case one night. A woman brought in, unconscious, bleeding heavily. She had no ID, no relatives, no name, just a swollen stomach and a heartbeat too weak to hold on." Kwame felt the room tilt slightly. "Are you saying she was pregnant?" Zuri said, finishing for him. "Very pregnant." The air thickened. Zuri kept her gaze on the window. The doctors worked for hours. She woke up once, long enough to say one thing. Kwame's mouth went dry. "What did she say?" "She said her name was Amale." Kwame's heart slammed against his ribs. Amale had told him she had gone on a humanitarian trip that year, disappearing for 3 months without explanation. He had believed her, loved her too much to question her. Zuri turned from the window, her eyes shimmering. "She didn't tell us who the father was. She didn't tell us why she was alone. She only kept repeating that the baby must live, even if she didn't." Kwame staggered back a half step, gripping the edge of a counter. "That's impossible. She never told me." "Because she didn't want you involved," Zuri said, voice softening but not apologetic. "She said the world around you was too dangerous, too political, too scrutinized. She said she needed to protect the baby from your life." Kwame's mind raced. Fragments of memories clashing violently. Amale crying alone in the bathroom, avoiding social media for months, wearing looser clothes, refusing to attend gala events. At the time, he thought she was dealing with the pressures of being married to a billionaire. He had blamed himself for her stress. But now Zuri's voice broke through his spiraling thoughts. The birth was complicated. She lost too much blood. They almost lost them both. But she fought. She fought like a lion. Kwame's throat tightened. He could barely breathe. "When the baby was born," Zuri continued, "she didn't ask to hold him. She didn't smile. She didn't even speak to him." "Why?" Kwame whispered. "She was terrified," Zuri said. "Terrified that someone would hurt him. She said the baby looked like someone important, someone people would question." Kwame felt himself growing cold. "She hid her pregnancy from me. Why?" Zuri shook her head. "I don't know. But after 3 days, when she gained a little strength, she took the baby and left the hospital against medical advice. She thanked me for helping her and made me swear to protect him if anything ever happened." She stopped. Her voice trembled at the next words. She told me perhaps one day she would return for him. Kwame's knees weakened. He reached for the chair behind him, lowering himself slowly. "What happened after she left?" he asked, barely audible. Zuri swallowed hard. 2 weeks later, I heard the news. Your wife was in a car crash. The hospital staff realized she was the same woman who gave birth, but no baby was found. Kwame lowered his head into his hands. My God. Zuri walked closer, her steps soft. I searched for the baby everywhere. I didn't know where she went. I thought I failed her. Then, 2 months later, I found a basket at the door of my rented room. Kwame lifted his head sharply. Amale brought him back. No, Zuri whispered. She didn't. The baby was alone. No note, no explanation, just a ribbon tied around his wrist. She paused. A ribbon with your wife's perfume on it. Kwame rubbed his face. Why didn't you tell the authorities? Why didn't you try to contact me? Zuri's voice rose, fueled by years of fear. Because people like me don't get believed, Mr. Afolabi. Because when a billionaire's wife dies mysteriously, the last person the police listen to is a broke nurse trainee living in a slum. They would have accused me of kidnapping. I would have lost him, and I made a promise. Kwame felt both anger and confusion boiling inside him. You should have told me. Zuri's glare was sharp enough to cut. And what would you have done? Taken him away, hidden him from the board, protected him from the vipers in your company that hated your wife because she wasn't from their elite circles? Kwame stiffened. He couldn't deny the truth. Amale had suffered silently because of his world. Zuri continued, tears slipping down her cheeks. I raised him with nothing, no support, no protection. I gave him every breath I had. And now, you come here, asking questions that will tear everything apart. Kwame rose slowly, a storm brewing behind his eyes. If this boy is her son, he said, he is also my son. Zuri's face went pale. Not yet. Not until we know the truth. Kwame's voice deepened. There is no version of this truth where I walk away from him. Zuri hugged herself tightly. You don't understand. Taking him into your world will expose secrets that were buried for a reason. Kwame stepped closer. And hiding him is destroying you. Look at him. He pointed to the boy, frail and trembling under the hospital blanket. Look at what illness and poverty have done to him. Is that what Amale wanted? Zuri's breath hitched. Kwame softened his tone. Let me help him. Let me help you. We can face the truth together. Zuri shook her head slowly. You want answers. But answers come with consequences. Kwame didn't hesitate. Then let them come. The door opened suddenly, and a doctor entered. Holding a clipboard, Mr. Afolabi, he said, we need consent for advanced tests, including a DNA test to check for genetic factors. The room froze. Zuri's eyes widened with horror. Kwame looked straight at her. This is our chance to know everything, he said. Zuri backed away as though struck. No, please, don't do this. Kwame's voice was calm, but unyielding. I have to. Tears streamed down Zuri's face. If the truth comes out, you won't be the only one whose life changes. Kwame turned to the doctor. Do it. No, Zuri cried, rushing forward, but the nurses gently held her back. Kwame watched her silently as she collapsed to her knees beside the bed, clutching Keo's tiny hand. Her sobs filled the room. Kwame's heart twisted painfully, but there was no turning back now. The truth was coming, and nothing, absolutely nothing, would stop it. The hallway outside the examination room felt colder than the rest of the hospital, as if the walls themselves were bracing for a truth that had waited 8 long years to break free. Kwame stood there with his arms crossed, staring at the floor, while the doctors prepared Keo for testing. Every second throbbed in his chest like a ticking bomb. Behind the closed door, he could hear Zuri's muffled sobs, not loud, but sharp enough to cut through the silence like glass. She had been clinging to Keo's hand until the nurses gently forced her back so they could begin the procedures. Her cries haunted him. Musa approached carefully. "Sir, should we increase security? If word gets out that a child connected to your late wife is here." Number Kwame's voice was low, almost a growl. "Not yet. Not until we know the truth." "But sir," I said. "No," Kwame repeated. "This stays between us." Musa swallowed and stepped back. Even he sensed that Kwame was holding on by a thin thread. Minutes stretched into an eternity. When the doors finally opened, Zuri stumbled out first. Tears streaked down her face, and her legs almost gave way. But she caught herself on the wall. She looked at Kwame with a mixture of desperation and accusation. "How could you do that?" she whispered. Kwame didn't answer. He couldn't. His throat felt locked. Zuri took a shaky step forward. "I told you he wasn't ready. I told you this would break us." "This isn't about breaking anyone," Kwame said quietly. "It's about the truth." Zuri shook her head fiercely. "The truth doesn't heal, it destroys." Before Kwame could respond, the doctor stepped out with a folder. "We've taken samples for the DNA test," he said. "Results will be ready by tomorrow morning. We've also started treatment for his lungs." "Is he stable?" Zuri asked immediately. "For now," the doctor replied, "but he needs rest." Kwame nodded. "Thank you, doctor. Please make sure he receives the best care." "We will, Mr. Afolabi," the doctor said before walking away. Zuri sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. Kwame watched her in silence. Guilt gnawed at him. But he didn't regret the decision, not when a child's identity was at stake. After a long moment, Zuri lifted her head. "Do you even care what this will do to him?" she whispered. Kwame crossed his arms. "I care enough to ensure he never has to live in fear again." Zuri's eyes glistened. "Do you think your world is safer?" "Children disappear in it. Too, but in suits, and silence instead of alleyways." Kwame stiffened. "If he truly is my son, he deserves the life that is his by right. He deserves protection, education, a home." "He already has a home," Zuri snapped. "In a leaking shack?" He shot back without thinking. The moment the words left his lips, he knew he'd gone too far. Zuri's face crumpled not in anger, but in heartbreak. "We survived because we had each other, because that was enough. You think money replaces love?" Kwame sighed heavily. "Of course not." But Zuri had already turned away, hugging herself. After a moment of tense silence, she spoke again, quieter, softer. "You think you're prepared for what the test will say, but you're not. And neither am I." Kwame sat opposite her, his voice low. "Then prepare me. Tell me everything." Zuri's fingers curled into her palms. She hesitated for a long moment, wrestling with something inside her. Finally, she said, "If I tell you, Keo loses everything." Kwame frowned. "What do you mean?" Zuri stared at the floor. "I mean, the moment you know the truth, his life won't belong to him anymore. It will belong to your legacy, your wealth, your enemies, your expectations. The truth will swallow him whole." Kwame inhaled sharply, anger and fear warring inside him. "I would never let that happen." "That's what Amale said," Zuri whispered. Kwame froze. Zuri continued, her voice cracking. "She told me she wasn't afraid for herself. She was afraid for him. Afraid that if the world found out who his father was, he would be taken, hidden, used." Kwame's hands clenched. "Used how?" Zuri wiped her cheeks roughly. "Your empire is full of sharks. You think I haven't heard the rumors? You think your company board wouldn't weaponize the existence of a hidden child to destroy your wife's name or yours?" Kwame's jaw tightened. "I can handle them. But could Amale?" Zuri asked softly. Kwame felt something inside him fracture. He remembered nights he came home late and found Amali sitting alone in the dark, staring at nothing. He remembered her distant smiles, her trembling hands, the way she flinched when someone mentioned the media. He had called it stress. He had never imagined she carried a secret too heavy for words. Zuri stood up suddenly. "You want the truth so badly? Then listen carefully." Kwame straightened. "Amale loved you," Zuri began slowly, "more than her own safety. But she also knew the world you lived in could crush her if she made one wrong move." Kwame swallowed. "That doesn't explain hiding a pregnancy from me." Zuri closed her eyes. "She didn't hide it at first. She tried to tell you." Kwame blinked. "When?" "The night before she disappeared for those 3 months. A memory flashed to Makle standing in their bedroom doorway, wringing her hands, eyes full of something he couldn't identify. She had opened her mouth, closed it, then whispered, "It's nothing, I'm fine." He had believed her. Zuri continued. "She said she tried, but every time she started, something stopped her. Fear, pressure, your political alliances, the media, your company. She said she didn't want the child to become a chess piece." Kwame's chest tightened painfully. "So she ran?" he whispered. "She hid," Zuri corrected. "She hid until the baby was born, and then she planned to come back. But fate stole that chance." Kwame stared at her, voice trembling. "Why me? Why didn't she trust me?" Zuri's expression softened for the first time. "She did trust you. More than anyone. That's why she made me swear to protect him until you were ready." Kwame blinked rapidly. "Ready for what?" "To choose him," Zuri whispered. "Not your company, not your image, not your pride. Him." Kwame sank back into the chair, breath shaking. Zuri walked to the bed and sat beside Ko again, gently adjusting the blanket over him. "He already knows he's different," she murmured. "He already asks questions about where he came from. I've done my best, but I can't give him a past I don't fully understand." Kwame approached slowly. "I want to help," he said softly. Zuri didn't look up. "Help destroys sometimes. Not this time." She exhaled shakily. "If the test proves you're his father, everything changes." Kwame nodded. "And if it proves I'm not?" Zuri faltered, hands tightening. "You still won't let us go," she whispered. He didn't deny it. The truth was no longer gently knocking, it was clawing at the door. Suddenly, Ko stirred, his tiny voice raspy. "Mama?" Zuri bent over him. "I'm here, my love." Kwame stood frozen, watching their silhouette mother and son, bound by survival and secrets. Outside the window, storm clouds gathered, swallowing the last traces of daylight. The results tomorrow would shatter something. Kwame didn't know whether it would be his heart, his past, or the fragile life Zuri had built. But he knew one thing for certain: there was no turning back. Kwame didn't sleep that night. He sat in the family waiting lounge, an exclusive, private section of the hospital reserved for VIPs yet. It felt like a prison. The lights were dimmed and silence wrapped around him like a shroud. His hands remained clasped tightly together, his elbows propped on his knees, as though holding himself upright required physical effort. In the room down the hall, Ko slept with the help of oxygen and medication, monitored by nurses who came in every hour. Zuri remained by his bedside, refusing the cot offered to her, refusing food, refusing rest. She only held Ko's hand and stared at him as if looking away might cause him to disappear. The night dragged on. Kwame's mind replayed every moment of his marriage with Amelie, every smile, every argument. Every night she sat awake while he worked late. The more he remembered, the more guilt coiled in his chest. How much had she endured in silence? How much had he missed? A soft knock broke the silence. Musa stepped inside carrying a thermos. "Sir, you should take something warm." Kwame didn't lift his head. "Not now." Sir, I said not now. Musa hesitated. Then carefully, whatever the truth is, you are not alone in this. Kwame let out a humorless breath. Aren't I? My wife hid an entire pregnancy from me, gave birth alone, and died with secrets I never saw. And now, this boy. He broke off, unable to finish. Musa nodded, placing the thermos on the table and withdrawing. Hours later, perhaps minutes, perhaps lifetimes, the first pale light of dawn crept through the windows, washing the room in gray. Kwame stood and stretched stiff limbs, then walked to Keo's room. He stopped at the doorway. Zuri was still awake. Her eyes were bloodshot, her hair disheveled, her posture slumped with exhaustion. Yet she looked more alert than ever, like a lioness guarding her cub. Her gaze flicked to Kwame, tired, wary, but steady. Any changes? He asked quietly. His fever dropped a little, Zuri answered, her voice hoarse. But they're keeping him under observation. Kwame nodded and stepped inside. The boy's small chest rose and fell slowly beneath the thin blanket. His curly hair was damp, his face pale. He looked nothing like the lively child Kwame had seen darting through the market the day before. Kwame felt something ache inside him, a complicated mix of grief, protectiveness, and fear. A nurse entered the room. Good morning. The lab just notified us. The DNA results will be ready in about an hour. Zuri tensed instantly, her fingers clutching Keo's hand tighter. Kwame inhaled deeply. Thank you. The nurse left. An hour, 60 minutes. 60 heartbeats. 60 steps closer to a truth that could either bind or break all of them. Kwame stood at the window, watching the sun rise over the city. The sky glowed orange, pushing away the remnants of the night. But inside him, darkness lingered. Zuri's voice broke the silence. Whatever those results say, she paused, gathering strength. I hope you will think before you act. Kwame turned to her. What do you mean? I mean, she said softly, don't let anger make you cruel. Kwame stiffened. I'm not a cruel man. Pain makes anyone cruel, Zuri murmured. Before he could respond, another knock sounded. This time, it was the doctor. He held a sealed envelope. Zuri gasped quietly and rose to her feet. Kwame's heart pounded painfully, echoing through his entire body. The doctor exhaled slowly. The boy is stable, but these results, you need to read them privately. Kwame took the envelope with trembling fingers. Zuri looked like she might collapse. Wait here, Kwame said gently. Zuri nodded slowly, gripping the bed rail for support. Kwame walked out of the room, down the hall, into an empty conference space. His chest tightened as he sat heavily at the table. He looked at the envelope for a long moment. Then slowly, he tore it open. He pulled out the paper, scanning for the line his eyes were desperate for. There it was. Paternal match, 99.8% probability. A punch of emotion hit him so fiercely he leaned forward, elbows on the table, gripping his hair. It was undeniable. The boy was his blood, his son, a child he never knew existed, a child his wife had died trying to protect. Kwame's breath stopped, then came back in shuddering waves. He felt pain, betrayal, shock, relief, so many emotions colliding he couldn't breathe. Minutes passed before he stood and walked back to the room. Zuri looked at him immediately, her entire body stiff with terror. Kwame closed the door behind him. Zuri whispered, "Tell me." He held out the paper. She stared at it, unable to reach for it. I can't." Kwame's voice softened. "It's the truth." Zuri closed her eyes. Tears poured down her cheeks. She didn't need to read the words. "What does this mean?" she whispered through trembling lips. "What will you do now?" Kwame approached slowly. "I don't know yet." Zuri clutched the edge of the bed, her voice breaking. "Please, please don't take him away from me." Kwame blinked. "Zuri, you don't understand." She raised her head finally, eyes wild with fear. He's all I have. I lost my job because of him. I lost my home because of him. I gave up everything because of a promise I made to a dying woman. If you take him, I'm not taking him, Kwame interrupted. Zuri froze. What? Kwame exhaled shakily and sat in the chair beside her. He needs both of us, he said. You've been his mother. I'm not here to erase that. Zuri covered her mouth with trembling hands. Kwame continued, voice trembling with vulnerability he rarely showed. I failed Amale while she was alive. I didn't see her pain. I didn't understand the danger she faced. I won't fail her son. Zuri sobbed softly. Kwame continued gently. But I won't destroy the only stable love he has ever known. I promise you that. Zuri sank to her knees beside the bed, sobbing silently. Kwame knelt beside her. The truth doesn't have to destroy us, he whispered. It can rebuild us. For the first time, Zuri didn't pull away. A small, hoarse voice broke the moment. Mama? They both turned. Keo's eyes fluttered open, looking back and forth between them. Mama, who's that man? Zuri's tears fell harder. Kwame placed a hand over his heart, voice breaking. I'm someone who should have been here, a long time ago. Keo blinked sleepily. You look like me. Kwame let out a shaky breath. Yes, I do. Zuri squeezed Keo's hand. Kwame touched the boy's other hand gently. For a moment, the three of them stayed like that, bound not by secrets anymore, but by something deeper. Something that felt like the fragile beginning of family. Outside, the morning sun rose higher, chasing away the last of the night, but inside the room, everything was only just beginning. For a long moment, none of them spoke. The machinery hummed softly. A nurse passed by the glass window outside, and distant chatter echoed faintly from the hallway. But inside the room, everything felt suspended, as if the world itself were holding its breath for the three souls within. Keo blinked again, his eyes still cloudy with fever, but curious. His chest rose and fell with measured effort as the oxygen supported him. Zuri leaned close, brushing his forehead gently. Baby, it's okay, she whispered. I'm right here. Kwame remained kneeling on the other side of the bed, still absorbing the weight of the boy's words, you look like me. It was such a simple sentence, such an innocent observation, yet it shattered and rebuilt him in the same breath. He swallowed, trying to steady the tremor in his voice. How are you feeling, son? The word son tasted foreign on his tongue, yet natural at the same time, like a truth that had been waiting years to surface. Keo blinked up at him. My chest hurts, he murmured, and my head. Zuri smoothed his hair again, but her hands were trembling. You're sick, love, but the doctors are helping you. You're getting better. Keo shifted his gaze back to Kwame with surprising clarity. Why are you here? Kwame hesitated. Because I care about you. The boy studied him, puzzled. But you don't know me. Kwame's throat tightened. Maybe I don't know you the way I should, but I'm going to. Keo frowned slightly, but his eyelids drooped. Exhaustion was pulling him back under. Okay, he whispered softly before drifting into sleep again. Zuri let out a shaky breath, almost collapsing into the chair. Kwame gently stood, steadying himself on the bed's railing. His mind was a storm relief, shock, heartbreak, guilt. But beneath it all, a fierce, growing determination burned. Zuri, he said quietly, we need to talk. She didn't look at him. I don't have anything else to say. Maybe not, he replied. But I do. Her shoulders tensed. Kwame walked around the bed and lowered himself slowly into the chair beside her. The truth is out now. Hiding it won't protect him anymore. She turned her head sharply, eyes red. You don't understand. Your world will swallow him whole. Reporters, lawyers, board members, your family, they'll all want answers, and none of them will care how much this will hurt him. Kwame met her gaze evenly. Then I will protect him from them. Zuri laughed softly, bitterly. You're a billionaire, Kwame. People like you don't get to choose what the world talks about. You are the conversation. Kwame didn't flinch. Then let them talk. Zuri shook her head. You say that now. But when the pressure comes, when they question him, question me. Question your wife's memory. What then? Kwame leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Then they answer to me. Her eyes softened. Just for a second, but quickly hardened again. You don't know what you're stepping into. Amale begged me to keep him safe. She trusted me, not your empire. Kwame inhaled slowly. Zuri, why didn't she tell me? Why didn't she trust me with this? Zuri's expression crumpled. She did trust you. Too much. That's why she was terrified. She said you loved too loudly, too openly. If the world found out she gave birth in secret, everything she built with you would collapse. Kwame felt a cold ripple down his spine. She told me, Zuri whispered through tears, that your enemies would use the baby to ruin both of you. Kwame closed his eyes. He knew it was true. His business rivals had always watched Amale with suspicion, questioning her influence, whispering that she married him to gain power. A hidden pregnancy, an unannounced child. The media would have devoured her. Maybe she was right. Maybe he couldn't have protected her then. The realization crushed him. When he opened his eyes again, he saw Zuri watching him afraid, but also exhausted from carrying a burden she should never have borne alone. Kwame spoke softly. I failed her once. I won't fail her, child. Zuri wiped a tear. And what about me? Kwame paused. You've been his mother. I won't take him from you. She laughed weakly. You say that now. Kwame reached into his pocket and pulled out the DNA results. He placed the folded paper on the nightstand between them, like a fragile bridge. Whatever happens, he said quietly, we'll decide it together. Zuri stared at the paper but didn't touch it. Suddenly there was a knock at the door. A nurse peeked in. Mr. Afolabi? There are 2 men here asking for you. They say it's urgent. Kwame stiffened. Who? They wouldn't say, but they look official. Zuri's eyes widened in panic. Oh God, oh God. No, Kwame immediately shook his head. Zuri, breathe. It's not about you. You don't know that, she whispered, stepping back. Kwame turned to the nurse. Where are they? In the lobby, sir. He glanced at Zuri one more time. I'll handle it. Stay here with Ko. Zuri nodded cautiously, though fear still hung on her face. Kwame stepped out and followed the nurse down the hallway to the private lobby. His security team stood there, alert and tense. 2 men in tailored suits were waiting. They weren't police. They weren't journalists. They were from the Afolabi Board of Trustees. Kwame's stomach sank. One of them, Mr. Olumide, a senior board member, gave a stiff nod. Kwame, we heard you're at the hospital. We need to talk. Kwame's eyes narrowed. How did you know I was here? Olumide lifted an eyebrow. Your car is parked outside. People talk. Of course they did. What do you want? Kwame asked sharply. The second man, younger and sharper, stepped forward. There are rumors, Kwame. Someone said you brought a child here. A child connected to your late wife. Kwame's blood ran cold. Rumors already? Zuri's warning echoed in his mind. They will use him. They will twist everything. He kept his expression stoic. That's none of your business. It is our business, Olumide said, voice low. You're the face of the company. Any scandal touches all of us. Kwame stepped closer, eyes blazing. If any of you interfere in my personal affairs, you'll regret it. The younger man smirked. So the rumors are true. Kwame's jaw tightened. You'll say nothing, he warned. You'll do nothing, and you'll stay far away from that child. Olumide studied him. Kwame, are you sure you know what you're doing? Kwame didn't hesitate. For the first time in a long time, yes. The two men exchanged a tense look, then turned and left. Kwame exhaled shakily once they were gone. Everything was accelerating. The truth was spreading. The danger was real. He hurried back to the room, blood still pounding in his ears. When he entered, Zuri looked at him anxiously. What happened? Kwame closed the door behind him. The board knows. Someone talked. Zuri's face went pale. Then it's starting. The thing Amale feared. Kwame stepped closer. Then we do what she couldn't. Zuri looked at him, confused. What? Kwame took a deep breath. We face it, together. Zuri stared at him for a long moment, searching, doubting, hoping. Finally, she whispered, if we're going to face this, you need to know the rest. Kwame froze. The rest? Zuri nodded slowly. Amale didn't just give birth in secret. His pulse quickened. She uncovered something dangerous, something connected to your company, and before she died, she tried to expose it. Kwame felt the floor disappear beneath him. What did she uncover? He whispered. Zuri's voice trembled. That KO wasn't the only thing she was keeping safe. Kwame stared at her, heart thundering. The storm had only begun. The room seemed to shrink around him, the air thickening with every word Zuri had spoken. For a moment, Kwame simply stood there, unable to move, unable to even breathe. His wife, his gentle, soft-spoken Amala had been hiding more than a child. She had uncovered something dangerous, something linked to his own company. A chill crawled down his spine. Kwame's heart thundered in his ears. Impossible. Amale never told me she felt threatened. That's exactly what scared her, Zuri whispered. She said if she told you, those people would just cover their tracks, maybe even turn you against her. Kwame clenched his fists. Who were they? Zuri's gaze shifted. The board. Your senior partners. Those men who smile at you in meetings, and then manipulate everything behind your back. Why? Kwame whispered. Why would they target my wife? Zuri swallowed. Because she found out that some of your major projects weren't just business ventures. There was embezzlement, fraud, money laundering. She overheard conversations she wasn't supposed to hear. Kwame knew there were politics in the board, tension, egos, hidden agendas. But this, Zuri looked directly into his eyes. She told me she didn't know who to trust. Not even you. Not because she feared you, but because she feared the consequences if you confronted the board without proof. She said she needed time. And headblinded by work, responsibilities, pride hadn't seen the storm around her. Zuri continued, her voice gentle but firm. Before she left, she said her biggest fear was that her child would be used as leverage against you, or killed. Kwame stopped dead in his tracks. Killed? He repeated. Hollow. Zuri nodded. She said money moves oceans, but it also drowns people quietly. Kwame's breath shook. What happened to the evidence she found? Zuri hesitated. I don't know everything. She only told me she collected files, documents, recordings, something about offshore accounts. She didn't show me anything. She only said that if she didn't make it back, I must keep the baby hidden. Kwame stared at her, heart pounding. So the evidence died with her? Zuri swallowed. I don't know. Maybe. He pressed his palms against the window, staring out into the brightening morning sky. The city bustled below, unaware of the storm raging within him. All these years, he had built his empire thinking he was in complete control. But now, his wife had died alone. His son had grown up in a shack, and his company might have been behind the worst tragedy of his life. His voice came out ragged. Why didn't you come to me sooner? Zuri laughed bitterly. You think the board wouldn't have silenced me the moment I walked into your office? You think they would let me live long enough to speak a word? Kwame's jaw tightened. I would have protected you. She looked at him sadly. You can't protect someone who can't even get past your office security without being removed. Silence. Painful. Heavy. He knew she was right. Kwame sank back into the chair, rubbing his temples. Then we need to find the truth. All of it. Zuri crossed her arms protectively over her chest. And what if the truth kills us too? Kwame looked up sharply. It won't. You don't know that. I won't allow it. Zuri shook her head. You can't fight a war you can't see. Kwame leaned forward, eyes fierce. I can, and I will. They looked at each other, tired, frightened, but united now by something bigger than either of them. Ko stirred slightly in his sleep. Zuri immediately rushed to his side, brushing his cheek with trembling fingers. Kwame watched them, this fragile, makeshift family, and felt a new fear ignite in his chest. Not fear of the truth, fear of losing them. A soft knock broke the moment. A nurse stepped inside. Mr. Afolabi, there's someone else asking for you. Zuri tensed instantly. Who? The board again? The nurse shook her head. No, a woman. Kwame frowned. What woman? She said her name is Dr. Naledi. The nurse hesitated. She was your wife's physician. Kwame's blood ran cold. His wife's doctor? Now, after all these years. Is she alone? He asked sharply. Yes. Kwame exchanged a glance with Zuri. Something flickered in her eyes, fear and recognition. Zuri whispered, she was the one who treated Amale during labor. Kwame straightened. Bring her to the private consultation room. I'll meet her there. The nurse nodded and slipped out. Zuri grabbed Kwame's wrist before he could leave. Be careful, she murmured. If she's here, it means the past is catching up to us. Kwame squeezed her hand gently. I'll be back soon. As he walked away, he felt the weight of the truth bearing down on him, heavier than ever. Something told him that Dr. Naledi wasn't here, with comfort or condolences. She was here with answers, or warnings, and either one could destroy everything. Kwame walked swiftly through the hospital corridor, his footsteps echoing faintly against the tiles. Each step felt heavier than the last. Dr. Naledi, a name he hadn't heard in years. A name his mind had buried somewhere deep, beneath memories of grief, confusion, and a million unanswered questions. He remembered her as the quiet, soft-spoken doctor who cared for Amala during her stress-related fainting spells 2 years before she died. He never thought anything of their closeness. Doctors often became confidants for patients under emotional strain. But now, with everything Zuri had revealed, her sudden appearance felt like a warning bell ringing in the middle of an already collapsing world. The private consultation room was dimly lit when he entered. A woman stood by the window, her back turned. Her hair was shorter now, laced with streaks of silver. Her posture was tense, hands clasped behind her. Dr. Naledi. Kwame's voice echoed slightly. She turned slowly. Her eyes met his, and something inside him tightened. Her expression wasn't one of greeting. It was one of remorse. Kwame, she said softly. It's been a long time. He didn't sit. Why are you here? Naledi inhaled deeply. Because the truth was never supposed to stay hidden this long. Kwame stiffened. What truth? She gestured to the chair. Please, sit. What I have to tell you, you will need strength to hear. He reluctantly lowered himself into the chair, though his entire body felt coiled. Naledi sat across from him, folding her hands in her lap. For a moment, she simply studied him, his tightened jaw, his trembling fingers, the grief buried behind his composed face. You look like a man who has lost everything, she murmured. Kwame's voice was clipped. Tell me why you're here. Naledi nodded. You deserve to know what happened to your wife. The real story, and why she came to me during those months she disappeared. Kwame's stomach twisted. You knew where she was? He asked, voice low and dangerous. Naledi looked down. Yes. He shot to his feet, rage rising like a firestorm. You let me believe she ran away alone. You let me think she abandoned me. She didn't abandon you, Naledi said, meeting his fury with calm sadness. She was protecting you. Kwame slammed his palms onto the table. Protecting me from what? Naledi stood slowly. The men you sit with in your boardroom. The men who run your empire beside you. Kwame froze. Naledi continued. Amale came to me trembling, terrified. She had overheard discussion stalks of offshore accounts, manipulated contracts, bribery. But that wasn't the worst of it. She discovered that some board members were planning to frame you for their crimes. Kwame felt his blood run ice cold. What? He breathed. They feared you, Kwame. Your honesty, your influence, your refusal to engage in corruption. They wanted you out, permanently. His vision blurred around the edges. Naledi stepped closer. Amale begged me for help, not for herself, for you. She told me you could survive any scandal, but not a betrayal by your own company. Kwame stumbled back a step. She never told me. She never said she couldn't, Naledi whispered. She thought if she did, you'd confront them, and they would. Take action. Kwame sank into the chair again, his hands shaking. So she left? Naledi nodded. She left to buy you time, to collect proof, to keep herself and her unborn baby out of danger. Kwame clenched his fists. But she died. Naledi's expression darkened. The crash was no accident. Kwame's heart slammed against his ribs. Naledi continued, voice steady, despite the horror of her words. 2 days before her death, she told me she had obtained something incriminating. A recording, documents, she didn't tell me exactly what. She said she was going to meet someone she trusted, someone who could help protect you. Who? Kwame demanded. Naledi hesitated. I don't know. She refused to tell me. Kwame felt his world tilt. She left your home, Naledi said softly, and never made it to her meeting. Silence fell. Painful. Suffocating. Kwame whispered, all these years, and you said nothing. Naledi's voice cracked. I was threatened, followed, my clinic vandalized. I was told if I ever mentioned her name again, I would disappear, just like she did. Kwame closed his eyes, fighting to breathe. He had built an empire on trust, loyalty, discipline, yet the very men he trusted had plotted against him, and his wife died carrying the burden of protecting him. His eyes stung. Naledi stepped forward. But now they know about the boy. Kwame snapped his head up. What? Naledi nodded grimly. I got a message last night from an unknown number. They know you brought a child to the hospital. They know the child is connected to Amale. Kwame's pulse thundered. Your son, Naledi whispered, is in danger. A fierce primal instinct surged inside him. I will not let anyone harm him. Naledi nodded. Then you must act quickly. They will strike fast before the truth spreads, before the child's identity becomes public. Kwame's breath came in sharp bursts. What about the evidence Amale collected? Does it still exist? Naledi hesitated again. Yes, I think so. Kwame stepped closer. Where? Naledi swallowed. Amale left me something, a key. She said if anything happened to her, I must give it to you when the time was right. Kwame's eyes widened. Do you have it? Naledi pulled a small metal key from her coat pocket, old, scratched, attached to a faded purple ribbon, a ribbon Kwame recognized, Amale's favorite. Kwame's voice trembled. What does it open? A storage unit, Naledi said, where she hid everything. His knees weakened. Where? Naledi pressed the key into his palm. Block B, Unit 36, Old Marina District. Kwame tightened his grip around it, as if holding the last piece of his wife he would ever receive. Naledi added, "Be careful. If they sense you're after the truth, they'll try to destroy you and the child." Kwame straightened, a fire blazing in his eyes. "Let them try." Naledi held his gaze for a moment. "Your wife would be proud of you for finally choosing the truth." Kwame inhaled deeply. "Thank you." Naledi nodded and left quietly through the side exit. The moment she disappeared, Kwame slipped the key into his pocket and hurried back to Keo's room. Inside, Zuri looked up instantly, fear sharpening her features. "What happened?" she asked. Kwame moved toward her, urgency in every step. "Zuri, everything is about to get much more dangerous." Her face paled. "What do you mean?" Kwame held up the key. "Amale left evidence. Proof. Everything the board tried to kill her for. I know where it is." Zuri stared at him in horror. "You're going to look for it?" Kwame nodded. "I have to." Zuri shook her head. "They will kill you. They will kill us." Kwame placed a firm hand over hers. "Then we protect each other. All three of us." Zuri swallowed hard. "Kwame, if you do this, there's no going back." He tightened his grip. "I know." Zuri looked at the sleeping boy, then back at Kwame. And for the first time, she whispered the words he needed to hear. "Then I'm with you." Kwame felt a surge of strength, unexpected, overwhelming. Together they both turned toward the sleeping child. A storm was coming, but for the first time, they weren't facing it alone. Morning sunlight seeped faintly through the blinds, casting pale stripes across the hospital room. Keo slept deeply, his breathing steadier now, the oxygen mask no longer fogging as heavily. Machines beeped in a slow, comforting rhythm. But beneath the surface of that fragile calm, a storm churned. Kwame paced the room like a caged lion, every step tight with urgency. Zuri sat by the bedside, her fingers gently stroking Keo's palm, as though reminding herself he was still here, still safe for now. Finally, she broke the silence. "What happened with Dr. Naledi?" Kwame stopped pacing. "She told me everything, or enough to know we're running out of time." He pulled out the small metal key, holding it between his fingers. The metal glinted in the light, but Zuri's expression shifted the moment she saw the faded purple ribbon tied to it. She whispered, "Amale's." Kwame nodded, his chest tightened. "Naledi said it opens a storage unit in the Marina district. That's where Amale hid the evidence." Zuri swallowed. "Evidence that could get us killed." "Evidence that could also save us," Kwame replied. Zuri shook her head. "You think exposing powerful men will make them surrender? No, they will come after us harder." "I'm aware," Kwame said grimly. "But if we don't find what she left, they will control the narrative. They will take my company, destroy her name, hunt the boy. We cannot stay blind." Zuri hesitated, torn between fear and loyalty. "What will you do with the evidence once you find it?" Kwame paused. The truth was, he didn't know. Expose it, hide it, use it to negotiate, burn down every corrupt piece of his empire. He had spent years running a kingdom built on trust. Now he realized half the kingdom had been rotting beneath him. He lowered his voice. "I'll decide once I understand what she found." Zuri sighed deeply, her fingers trembling as she brushed Keo's curls. "You're putting yourself at risk." Kwame stepped closer. "I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing it for him and for her." Zuri's eyes glistened. A soft knock interrupted them. A nurse peeked in. "Mr. Afalabi, the boy's condition is stable, but you need to be aware. 2 men came earlier asking for access to the ward." Kwame stiffened. "Did you give it to them?" "No," the nurse said quickly. "I told them this floor is restricted. They insisted they had authorization. They did not." Kwame exchanged a sharp look with Zuri. Her skin went pale. "They're coming," she whispered. Kwame's jaw hardened. "Then I'll go now, before more people show up." Zuri grabbed his wrist. "You can't go alone." Kwame's expression softened. "You need to stay here, with him." Zuri sprang to her feet, shaking. "If anything happens, he'll have no one else. And if you fail," Kwame placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I won't fail." Zuri looked into his eyes, searching Wall, and analyzing, but the determination in his gaze was unshakable. After a long moment, she whispered, "Come back to us." Kwame nodded once, firmly. "I will." He turned to exit, but Musa suddenly appeared at the door, breathing hard. "Sir," he whispered urgently, "we need to leave now. There are 4 unfamiliar men downstairs, armed, pretending to be hospital security." Zuri gasped. Kwame stepped forward. "Are they looking for me or the boy?" "We don't know," Musa replied, "but they're scanning the visitor's log and asking questions." Kwame didn't hesitate. "Get the car ready, back exit. No one sees us." Musa nodded and disappeared. Kwame turned back to Zuri. "Lock the door behind me. Don't open for anyone except me or Musa. Do you understand?" Zuri nodded, fear trembling in her breath. "And Zuri," he added softly, "whatever happens, don't let anyone take him." Her eyes hardened. "They won't." Kwame gave one last look at Ko sleeping helplessly, unaware of the danger circling them, before stepping out of the room. Zuri rushed to the door the moment he left, locking it firmly. She pressed her back against it, slid to the floor, and buried her face in her hands. For the first time since Amale died, she felt the weight of the promise she had made collapse over her like a physical force. "I'll protect him," she whispered through tears, "even if it breaks me." Kwame moved swiftly through the hallway beside Musa, keeping his head low. Hospital staff recognized him, but one sharp glare from Musa was enough to silence questions. They reached the service elevator. "Sir," Musa whispered. "If they catch you, they won't," Kwame said. "You don't know that." Kwame looked at him. "If I run, they'll know I'm scared, and that will make them come harder. If I move confidently, they'll doubt themselves." The elevator doors slid open. They stepped inside. Musa pressed the button for the underground parking level. As the elevator descended, Kwame closed his hand around the key. His heartbeat thudded in his ears. Amale's ribbon brushed his palm, soft as a ghost's whisper. He thought of her smile, her laugh, her trembling hands when she tried to speak to him that night. The tears she hid, the secrets she died protecting. "I should have known," he murmured. "I should have seen her pain." Musa glanced at him. "Sir, loving someone doesn't make you a mind reader." Kwame gave him a sad smile. "No. But loving someone should make you notice when they're drowning." The elevator dinged. The doors opened into a dim underground lot. Musa grabbed Kwame's arm abruptly. "Wait." Footsteps echoed. 2 silhouettes approached slowly from behind a column, voices low. "He's still upstairs. But the kid is guarded. Board wants confirmation. Then we call Okori." Kwame's blood iced. Okori was the most ruthless board member, polished smile, poison behind his eyes. "If he was involved," Musa whispered urgently. "Sir, back to the elevator." Kwame shook his head. No time. He darted behind a row of parked cars, Musa on his heels. One of the men stepped closer. "Check the lower floors. If he tries to run, we intercept." Footsteps approached. Another voice muttered, "Boss said no mistakes." Kwame and Musa exchanged a look. Musa mouthed, "Now." Quiet as shadows, they slipped around the cars, weaving until they reached the far side of the lot where the emergency exit door waited. Musa cracked it open. Fresh air rushed in. They slipped outside. Musa's sleek SUV was parked beside the loading dock. He opened the door for Kwame. "Where to?" Musa asked. Kwame pulled out the key again, his jaw clenched. "The Marina District. Now." Musa nodded and stepped on the accelerator. The SUV surged forward, leaving the hospital behind. Kwame stared out the window, chest tight. Danger was closing in on all sides, but he pushed the fear away. He would reach that storage unit. He would find what Amale risked everything to protect, and for the first time, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He would burn his empire to ashes before letting anyone touch his son. The drive to the Marina District cut through the heart of Lagos, but for Kwame, the city felt like another world, entirely a distant hum beyond the storm inside his chest. The SUV sped through traffic, Musa weaving masterfully between cars, but every red light, every slowing danfo, every street vendor stepping onto the road made Kwame's pulse thicken with urgency. Every second counted. Somewhere behind him, men who once shook his hand in boardrooms were now hunting him. Somewhere ahead, a shuttered metal door with a small number, Unit 36, held the last fragments of a truth Amale had died to protect. Kwame tightened his grip around the key. The purple ribbon fluttered with every bump in the road, brushing his knuckles like the touch of a ghost. "Sir," Musa said, eyes still on the road, "whatever is in that storage unit, are you sure you want to open it?" Kwame didn't look away from the window. "I have to." Musa hesitated. "Even if it destroys everything?" Kwame's jaw tightened. "Everything is already destroyed. I just didn't know it." Musa fell silent. They exited the expressway, turning into the older part of Marina rundown buildings. Peeling paint, scattered warehouses. The air smelled of salt from the ocean nearby. Men in faded overalls rolled trolleys of crates. It was a working-class area. The kind Amale always said reminded her of home. Kwame felt something twist inside him. "Slow down," he said. Musa eased off the accelerator. The storage facility came into view, a long row of metal units, dull blue doors, each one marked by numbers stenciled decades ago. The place was quiet except for the occasional distant clang of someone dropping scrap metal. Musa scanned the surroundings. "It looks clear." Kwame nodded. "Park outside. Keep the engine running." Musa frowned. "I'm coming with you." Kwame shook his head. "No. If something happens, I need you to get to the hospital. Protect them. Do you understand?" Musa's breath caught. He knew exactly who the meant. "Yes, sir." Kwame stepped out of the SUV, closing the door quietly behind him. He scanned the area once more, old fishermen weaving nets, a mechanic wiping oil from his hands, a woman selling puff-puff under a shade cloth. Normal. Yet every corner felt like a threat waiting to unfold. Kwame approached the storage facility, boots crunching over gravel. His fingers trembled slightly as he followed the sequence of numbers. 32, 33, 34, 35. He stopped at Unit 36. The faded number was crooked, like it had been repainted hurriedly. Rust spread along the edges of the metal door. A padlock dangled from the latch hold, weathered but intact. Kwame exhaled shakily. He held up the key. To his shock, his hands began to tremble, not from fear, but from grief. He could almost see her here, Amale, standing in this very spot, alone, pregnant, terrified, hiding evidence while carrying a child she feared the world would use as a weapon. "I'm sorry," Kwame whispered. The wind tugged lightly at his shirt. He fit the key into the padlock. The metal clicked. A small sound, but it sliced straight through his chest. Kwame pulled the lock free, slid the latch aside, and slowly lifted the rolling metal door. It groaned loudly as it rose. Inside, dim light filtered onto a small space cluttered with stacked boxes, sealed envelopes, and a few plastic crates. A thin layer of dust coated everything. But what struck him were the things that didn't belong. A woman's coat hung on a metal hookers. A baby blanket, neatly folded in a crate blue with tiny embroidered elephants. A photograph pinned to the Wallamala, smiling faintly, one hand on her belly. Kwame stepped inside on shaking legs. The air smelled of dust and old paper. He touched the blanket first, lifting it gently. The fabric was soft, worn like it had been held often, maybe cried into. He swallowed hard. God, Amahala, why didn't you tell me? On a table in the center lay a stack of files tied with twine, a black recorder, and several USB drives. Kwame's pulse quickened as he reached for the recorder. A small label was taped to it in Amahale's handwriting. If you're listening to this, it means they found me. Kwame froze. The room swayed. He pressed the play button with a trembling thumb. Amale's voice filled the space, soft, breathless, trembling. Kwame, my love, I don't know if you'll ever hear this. I hope you don't, because if you do, it means something has gone terribly wrong. Kwame's chest cracked open. Amale continued, voice breaking. I didn't leave you because I stopped loving you. I left because I love you too much. Because I overheard things, people planning to betray you, people you trust. They said they could use me or the baby to break you, to control you. Kwame leaned heavily against the table. I'm so sorry, Amal whispered. I wanted to tell you every day. But every time I looked at you, I saw what they would do to us if they discovered the truth. Her breath hitched. If I don't make it back, please don't hate me. Please protect our son, and when the time comes, trust Zuri. She knows how to keep him safe. Kwame pressed a hand to his eyes. Amale's voice grew faint, distant. I love you, Kwame, always. I only pray you never have to choose between me and the truth. The recording clicked off. Kwame collapsed into the chair, gripping his hair as tears slid down his cheeks. Silent, violent, he pressed his palm against the recorder as if touching her through it. I would have chosen you, he whispered. Every time. I would have chosen you. After several moments, he forced himself to breathe. Wiping his face, he turned to the files. Inside the first folder were printed emails, correspondence between board members discussing offshore accounts and political bribes. Next, bank statements showing massive transfers under shell companies, then photographs. Photographs of meetings between his senior partners and known criminals. Finally, a sealed envelope with his name written in Amale's handwriting. His fingers shook as he opened it. Inside was a letter. My love, if you're reading this, I didn't survive. There is more you must know. Your board did not just want you removed, they wanted you destroyed. And the baby was never supposed to live. Kwame's breath died in his chest. His vision blurred, but he forced himself to read. When I was 6 months pregnant, 2 men followed me. They confronted me, demanded I terminate the pregnancy. They said the child could not be allowed to exist. I ran. Naledi hid me. I survived the birth. Barely. But I knew I couldn't return home. Not until I could prove everything. Kwame, they killed me. Please stop them. For our son, for the truth, for us. Kwame's knees buckled. Her death, it wasn't an accident. It was murder. And he had buried her without knowing. He wiped his face with shaking hands. He gathered the files, USB drives, recordings, photos, and letters, stuffing them into his bag. As he did, footsteps echoed from outside the storage unit. Kwame froze. Musa's voice whispered harshly, "Sir," but he didn't finish. Another voice interrupted. Sharp, cold, familiar. Well, looks like the widow has finally opened the door. Kwame turned slowly. Standing at the entrance of the unit were 2 men in suits, and behind them board member Okori, smiling. But his smile was venom. It's over, Kwame, Okori said softly. You should have stayed blind. Kwame's blood ran cold. He stood tall, bag of evidence in hand. No, he said quietly, it's just beginning. Okori's smile faded, and the danger in his eyes ignited. For a heartbeat, the air inside the storage unit turned razor sharp. Dust hung unmoving, the sunlight slicing in from the doorway like a blade. Kwame stood frozen in the dim space, bag of evidence clutched in his hand, while Okori's silhouette filled the entrance calm, composed, and dripping with poisonous confidence. Behind him, two men in dark suits blocked the only exit, their expressions blank, but their posture unmistakably lethal. Kwame's pulse hammered, yet his face remained still. If he showed fear, they won. Okori stepped forward, hands clasped behind his back like he was touring a museum rather than a crime scene. "Kwame," he murmured, "you should have left the past buried. It was done, clean, forgotten." Kwame said nothing. He couldn't trust his voice yet. Okori looked around the storage unit, clicking his tongue softly. "So she did hide something here. Your wife was cleverer than we gave her credit for, but not clever enough." Kwame's jaw tightened. "You murdered her." Okori tilted his head, feigning hurt. Now. Words like that can be dangerous. Accusations, especially from someone of your stature, must be proven. Kwame lifted the bag slightly. "I have proof." Okori's smile sharpened. "No, Kwame, you have a bag. Proof would require you to leave this building alive." The two men behind him shifted subtly, closing in. Kwame's fingers tightened around the strap. "If you touch me, the board will know." "The board already knows," Okori replied smoothly. "They sent me." A cold shiver crept down Kwame's spine. Of course, that was why they'd come to the hospital, why they'd been looking for the boy. They weren't afraid of a scandal, they were afraid the truth would destroy them. Kwame steadied his breathing. "What do you want?" Okori gave a bored sigh. "Simple. You give me that bag, and we escort you back to your office. You resign gracefully, claim medical stress, move abroad, and live a quiet life with whatever dignity you have left." Kwame stared at him. "And the boy?" Okori's smile widened. "You don't need to worry about him. He won't be a problem anymore." A flash of ice shot through Kwame's veins. He stepped back instinctively, the evidence pressed to his chest. "If you lay a finger on that child," Okori snapped, for the first time losing his composure, "should never have been born. Your wife made a mistake. We corrected it once. We'll correct it again." Kwame's vision tunneled. Everything inside him, every shred of grief, rage, guilt, ignited into a fierce, blinding fire. "You killed my wife," he whispered. "You tried to kill my son." Okori raised a hand, and the two men took a step forward. Kwame backed toward the table, eyes scanning for anything he could use. A fire extinguisher hung on the wall behind him. One of the men lunged. Kwame grabbed the extinguisher and swung. Metal slammed into bone. The man staggered, clutching his face as blood poured from his nose. Kwame didn't stop. He swung again, knocking the man to the ground. The second man charged. Kwame dodged, but the cramped space limited his movement. The man's fist slammed into Kwame's ribs. Pain burst through him, but adrenaline kept him upright. Kwame shoved the man backward into the crates, sending papers scattering. "Idiots," Okori barked, stepping aside as the fight spilled outside the unit. Kwame hurled the extinguisher at the second man, hitting him square in the chest. The man collapsed onto a pile of wooden pallets. Now free for a second, Kwame grabbed the bag and sprinted toward the exit. But Okori moved with startling speed for his age. He slammed the metal door down, halfway closed, blocking the exit. Kwame crashed into it, unable to escape. Okori pressed his weight against the door, sneering. "You disappoint me, Kwame." Kwame pushed back with all his strength, but the metal wouldn't budge. Okori twisted the locking mechanism. A sound cut through the struggle, the roar of an engine. Kwame's heart skipped. The SUV, Musa, outside the vehicle accelerated sharply. Tires screeched. Something slammed into the storage unit's side with violent force. The metal wall buckled inward. Okori lost his balance, stumbling. Kwame seized the chance, shoving the door upward. Okori toppled backward, hitting the gravel. Kwame bolted out. "Musa, go!" The SUV reversed, its front bumper crushed from the impact. Musa threw open the back door. "Get in!" Kwame dove inside, just as Okori shouted, "Stop them!" The remaining man staggered to his feet, pulling something from his jacket. "A gun. Musa, move." The SUV launched forward. A gunshot cracked through the air. The bullet tore through the rear glass. Kwame ducked, shielding the bag with his body. The SUV swerved violently around the corner as more shouts erupted behind them. Musa didn't slow down for a second. After 2 blocks, he looked into the rearview mirror. "They're chasing us." Kwame turned. 2 black sedans were speeding down the street. "Lose them," Kwame ordered. Musa gritted his teeth. "Yes, sir." He jerked the wheel, swerving into a narrow alleyway between 2 seafood warehouses. The SUV bounced over potholes before emerging onto another road. The sedans followed. Kwame clenched his jaw. "Faster! I'm trying, sir." They burst onto a main road, narrowly avoiding a Kiki Napep. Horns blared. A vendor dropped a whole basin of plantains in fright. Musa shot into traffic, weaving through cars so tightly they brushed side mirrors. One of the sedans tried to corner them. Musa slammed the brakes, spun the wheel hard, and squeezed between a Danfo bus and a delivery truck. The sedan scraped the side of the bus, sparks flying. Kwame held his breath. The second sedan closed in. Musa yelled, "Hold on!" He spun the SUV into a market street, scattering pedestrians. Vendors screamed, tables flew, produce rolled beneath tires. The sedan behind them tried the same turn, but skidded on the spilled tomatoes and crashed into a palm tree. Kwame turned around. "One left." "Almost," Musa shouted. They cut sharply toward the ocean front. The final sedan accelerated. Kwame's heart hammered. "Musatere!" Ahead, a construction zone stretched across the road, fenced by orange barriers. A narrow gap remained open for workers. "Sir, that's too tight. You can make it. Go!" Musa inhaled once and hit the gas. The SUV blasted through the gap, grazing the metal fencing with a violent screech. The sedan tried to follow, but its angle was wrong. It clipped the side barrier, flipped, and crashed onto its roof. Musa kept driving. For several more blocks, neither man spoke. Only when they reached a quiet street did he slow down. Finally, Musa exhaled. "Sir, we're clear." Kwame leaned back, chest rising and falling. He looked at the bag lying beside him, the evidence, the recordings, his wife's truth. "Take us back to the hospital," he said quietly. Musa adjusted the mirror. "Sir, after what happened, they might go there next." Kwame nodded. "Exactly. That's why we need to get there first." Musa swallowed. "What if they already have?" Kwame gripped the bag tightly. "Then we're not leaving without them." Musa nodded, stepped on the accelerator, and the SUV sped back into the heart of danger. Kwame stared out the window, jaw set with a new, unbreakable resolve. He wasn't just fighting for the truth anymore. He was fighting for his family, and he would destroy anyone who tried to take them from him again. The drive back to the hospital felt like navigating the edge of a blade-one wrong turn, one wrong shadow, and everything could fall apart. Musa gripped the steering wheel, jaw clenched, eyes flicking between mirrors every few seconds. The SUV hummed steadily beneath them, but tension filled the cabin like smoke. Kwame sat in the back seat, one hand clutching the bag of evidence, the other gripping the handle above the door as if bracing for impact. The adrenaline from the escape still pulsed through his veins, but now a different fear clawed at him. Zuri, Ko, the hospital. Dear God, what if Okori had already sent men there? He leaned forward. "Musa, faster. We're almost there, sir." Kwame's leg bounced uncontrollably. His thoughts ran wild. replaying everything he'd learned, every word Amale left behind, every threat Okori hurled. His wife had died alone, hunted. His son had survived only because Zuri had sacrificed everything. And Kwame, blind, trusting, consumed by work, had protected neither. Not again. Never again. As they turned into the hospital street, Kwame's breath caught. 2 black SUVs were parked near the entrance. Not hospital vehicles, not police. Men in dark suits lingered outside, talking into earpieces, scanning the area. Musa whispered, "They're here." Kwame's heart pounded violently. "Drive to the back entrance." Musa swung the SUV away, slipping into the side road. Kwame gripped the bag tighter. "Park behind the staff wing. They won't expect us there." Musa nodded and sped toward the back of the hospital, pulling into a narrow alley where ambulances were loaded with supplies. No black SUVs, no suited men. Kwame exhaled shakily. "Good. We'll enter through the emergency stairwell." Musa killed the engine and hopped out. Kwame followed, scanning every corner. They moved quickly toward the service entrance. Kwame's gait brisk, determined, but the weight of fear still clinging to him. At the door, Musa paused. "Sir, whatever's inside, you can't lose control. They expect panic. You must be smarter." Kwame gave him a grim nod. "I won't panic. But if they touched him..." His voice cracked. He didn't finish. They slipped inside the stairwell, the heavy metal door closing behind them with a dull echo. The stairs creaked under their feet as they climbed. The fluorescent lights flickered. Every step felt like walking into the lion's den. On the 3rd-floor landing, Kwame pressed his ear to the door. Voices drifted from the hallway beyond. Muffled, hurried, he opened the door a crack. 2 security guards, not hospital staff, stood in the corridor, scanning rooms. One held a tablet, checking patient names. Kwame's stomach lurched. They were hunting Ko. Musa whispered, "We can take them out quietly." "No," Kwame hissed. "We can't draw attention. We go around." He closed the door quietly. Next floor. They climbed to the 4th floor and entered a quieter hall. Kwame recognized the layout. Kayo's room was 1 floor below, but they could descend using the ward's internal stairs. They slipped through a side corridor, keeping low, ears alert. The hospital was too quiet for morning hours. Nurses whispered nervously. Doors were shut. Tension filled the air. Kwame and Musa turned a corner and froze. A nurse stood pressed against the wall, trembling. A man in a dark suit towered over her, speaking in a low, threatening tone. "Where's the boy? You don't want trouble." The nurse shook her head furiously. I don't know anything. Please." The man grabbed her arm. Kwame acted without thinking. He moved silently, grabbed the man by the shoulder, and spun him around. Before the man could react, Kwame slammed him against the wall, forearm pressed to his throat. "Touch her again," Kwame growled, "and you'll leave this hospital on a stretcher." The man choked for breath, eyes bulging. Musa quickly pulled the man's gun from his jacket and tucked it into his own belt. Kwame released just enough pressure to let him speak. The man gasped. "Well, we're just looking for a patient. Orders from, I know who your orders come from," Kwame hissed. "Which means you know exactly who I am." The man paled visibly. Kwame leaned closer, voice low and deadly. "If you value your life, you will leave this hospital, and you will tell the others to leave. If I see any of you again," he paused, letting the threat hang in the air, "I will bury your employer with the evidence he fears." The man trembled violently. Musa jerked his head toward the elevator. "Go." The man scrambled away, practically tripping over himself as he fled. The nurse clutched her chest, panting. "Thank you," she whispered. Kwame gave her a gentle nod. "Which room did they reach?" "West Wing," she whispered. But the woman, the boy's guardian, locked the door. She wouldn't let anyone in. "Zuri." Kwame's breath caught in his throat. "Which room?" he asked urgently. 307. Kwame took off running. He didn't wait for Musa, didn't wait for the nurse. He sprinted down the hall, past frightened patients, past wide-eyed nurses, past the fear tightening around every corner. He reached the emergency stairs, flew down them, and burst into the third-floor corridor. More suited men were there but looking in the opposite direction. Good. He darted into a connecting hallway, heart pounding. Then he saw it. Room 307. The door was cracked, light spilled through. Kwame's pulse slammed so hard it hurt. He pushed the door open and nearly collapsed with relief. Zuri stood inside, clutching an IV pole like a weapon. Sweat dripped down her forehead. Her eyes were wild, but fierce. Ko lay on the bed, still asleep, still breathing, unharmed. Zuri gasped when she saw him. Kwame. He closed the door quickly behind him and locked it. Musa took position by the window, scanning for movement. Kwame rushed to the bedside and touched Ko's small hand, grounding himself. Only then did he turn to Zuri. "Are you all right?" he asked, voice barely holding together. Zuri's breath hitched. "They tried to come in. They lied, said they were staff doing routine checks. But I recognized one of their faces from the market. I blocked the door with the cabinet." Kwame stepped closer and cupped her cheek gently. "You protected him." "I almost wasn't enough," she whispered brokenly. "If they got in," Kwame shook his head firmly. "They didn't. You saved him." Zuri's knees finally gave out. She slid into the chair, chest heaving. Kwame knelt beside her. "They'll come back," she whispered, "unless we leave." Kwame exhaled slowly. "I know." Musa moved toward them. "Sir, the hospital is compromised. They have men on multiple floors. We cannot stay." Kwame's jaw clenched. "Then we leave. Now." Zuri inhaled sharply. But Kayohe's still on oxygen. Still, Kwame turned to the boy, brushing a hand through his curls. "Moving him is dangerous, but keeping him here is worse." Zuri bit her lip. "Where will we go?" Kwame stood, conviction hardening his features. "A safe place. One no one knows about." Musa nodded. "I can prepare a secondary vehicle. Something unmarked." Kwame turned to Zuri. "Pack only what he needs. We can't risk staying longer." She hurried to gather Ko's things: medication, small clothes, documents the hospital had given her. Kwame disconnected the oxygen monitor carefully, lifting Ko with gentle arms. The boy stirred weakly, but did not wake. "He's burning up again," Zuri whispered anxiously. "We'll take him somewhere safer, somewhere clean," Kwame reassured her. "He'll receive care, real care, not under threat." Another set of footsteps echoed outside the door, heavy, purposeful. Zuri froze. Kwame pressed a finger to her lips, then whispered to Musa, "Back window, now." Musa nodded and pulled a small tool from his belt, unlocking the safety latch. He pushed the window open to reveal a narrow ledge overlooking the parking lot. Kwame adjusted Ko in his arms. Zuri climbed through first, shaky but determined. Kwame followed, carrying the boy. Musa slipped out last, closing the window silently behind him. They crouched low as they moved across the ledge toward the fire escape. A voice shouted from inside the room behind them. "They're gone." Kwame tightened his grip. "Move," Musa whispered. They climbed down quickly, quietly, vanishing into the shadows behind the hospital. Within minutes, an unmarked gray sedan slid into view. Musa's backup vehicle. Kwame opened the back door, gently placing Ko across the seat. Zuri climbed in beside him, clutching the boy's hand. Kwame turned to Musa as he entered the front seat. "Drive." And as the car pulled away from the hospital, disappearing into the maze of Lagos streets, Kwame looked back once at the towering building behind them. He knew something with chilling clarity. They couldn't hide anymore, not from the truth, not from the board, not from the men who killed his wife, not from the danger hunting his son. There was only one way out now. They had to finish what Amale started, together. The unmarked gray sedan snaked through the traffic of Lagos like a hunted animal fleeing predators. Musa kept his hands steady on the wheel, eyes sharp, scanning every mirror, every turn, every approaching vehicle. The city was waking up, horns blaring, vendors shouting, buses screeching to stops, but inside that car, silence pressed so heavily it felt suffocating. Kwame sat in the back seat with Ko lying across his lap, the boys breathing shallow, his skin hot. Zuri sat beside them, gently sponging his forehead with a damp cloth Musa had grabbed from a pharmacy on their way out. Her hands shook, but her face was burning with a fierce determination. "How long until we reach the safe house?" Zuri whispered. Kwame shut his eyes briefly, pain tightening every muscle in his face. "I won't let them hurt her again, and I won't let them touch him." Zuri looked at Ko and whispered, voice cracking, "She loved you, Kwame. She died for you, and for him." Kwame opened his eyes. They weren't soft anymore. They glowed with a terrifying resolve. "Then I'll finish what she began." The car turned off the main road, heading toward the outskirts where luxury estates dotted the coastline. Unlike the flashy mansions of the wealthy elite, Kwame's safe house was hidden behind a grove of palm trees, surrounded by high stone walls and accessed through a narrow private road. It wasn't a place he'd ever visited for pleasure. It was a refuge built during a time when political tensions once threatened his business empire, a fortress only a handful of people in the world knew existed. Musa slowed the car as the steel gate rolled open. "Once we're inside, we're invisible," Musa said. As the sedan pulled into the courtyard, Zuri's eyes widened. The house was modest compared to the Afolabi mansion's single-story, modern, fortified, surrounded by lush greenery, but it radiated safety. Kwame stepped out first, cradling Ko carefully. "Zuri, come!" She hurried after him, clutching her small bag tightly. Musa followed, scanning the perimeter. Inside, the safe house was spotless and quiet. Kwame took Ko straight into one of the bedrooms and gently laid him on the bed. The child whimpered, eyes fluttering open for the first time in hours. "Papa," he whispered weakly. Zuri froze. Kwame's breath hitched painfully. He knelt beside the bed. "I'm here, son. You're safe." Ko reached for his hand. Kwame took it, bringing it to his lips. "You're safe," he repeated, more to himself than the child. Zuri wiped her tears quickly and moved to check his temperature. "Still too high." "He needs proper medication," she murmured. "We didn't get everything we needed from the hospital." "I'll send Musa," Kwame said. Musa shook his head immediately. "Sir, if I leave, they'll track me. We should wait until dark." "By dark, he might be worse," Zuri argued. "He needs antibiotics, fever reducers, nebulizers, everything." Kwame stood, rubbing his temples. There must be something here. A medical kit. He left to search the safe house and returned minutes later, carrying a large metal case. This place was stocked for emergencies, natural disasters, riots. "I hope some of it helps." Zuri opened the case quickly and exhaled in relief. "It's not ideal, but we can stabilize him for now." She prepared an injection for his fever. Ko whimpered softly as she administered it, then drifted into a deeper sleep. Only when his breathing evened out did Zuri step back, exhausted. Kwame motioned toward the main room. "Let him rest. We need to talk." They sat in the living room, Kwame and Zuri on opposite sides of a coffee table, Musa standing guard near the window. The bag of evidence sat between them, an unspoken power radiating from it like a ticking bomb. Kwame pulled out the files, USB drives, photos, and Amale's letter. Zuri stared at the items with a mixture of pain and awe. She gathered all of this, while pregnant, while alone. Kwame nodded. She risked everything, and now it's our responsibility. Zuri hugged herself. "What do we do first? Go to the police?" Kwame shook his head. "No, The police are compromised. Too many of them answer to people like Okori. Then a journalist, she asked. Too dangerous. The moment a reporter gets involved, the board will know exactly where the leak is coming from. They'll move more violently. Zuri swallowed. So what's the plan? Kwame took a deep breath. We go to the only person the board fears. Zuri blinked. Who? Kwame leaned back, jaw hardening. Senator Nwachukwu, my father's oldest friend, and the only man powerful enough to take down the entire board. Zuri hesitated. Can you trust him? Kwame's eyes darkened. No, but he hates the board more than he hates corruption. That's enough. Musa stepped forward. Sir, he lives 2 hours away in Abuja. With the roads being watched, driving is dangerous. Kwame nodded. We won't drive. Zuri frowned. Then how? There's a private helipad 2 kilometers from here, Kwame said. My father built it during the last political unrest. Musa raised an eyebrow. You want to fly? That's even more visible. Kwame looked him straight in the eye. That's why no one will expect it. Zuri bit her lip. But Kayohi's so sick. Can he handle the flight? Kwame looked toward the bedroom, pain tightening his face. We'll take a portable oxygen tank, and I'll carry him the entire way. Zuri pressed a hand to her chest. And after we reach the senator? Kwame stared at the table. We give him the evidence. In exchange for protection. And when he exposes everything, Zuri asked softly. Kwame's voice dropped. Then Amale's death will finally be avenged. Silence fell. Zuri reached out hesitantly and touched his hand. And what about us? Kwame looked at her, something softening in his eyes. You and Ko are not pawns. You come with me. You stay under my protection. Zuri blinked, surprised. But once the truth comes out, they'll come for us too. Kwame squeezed her hand gently. Then I'll stand between you and them. Her eyes glistened. I won't lose anyone else, he whispered. Zuri bowed her head. Then she nodded. Then we go, she said. All of us. Kwame stood, fire burning in his chest. We leave at sundown, he said. Musa nodded. I'll prepare the route. Kwame returned to the bedroom, watching the small rise and fall of Ko's chest. He brushed the boy's cheek. We're leaving, son, he whispered. And when we come back, no one will ever threaten us again. He felt Amale's ribbon in his pocket, and his resolve hardened into steel. Tomorrow, his enemies would learn Kwame Afolabi was done running. He was going to war. Sundown arrived like a curtain falling over Lagos thick, heavy and filled with shadows, long enough to hide danger and hope in equal measure. The sky smoldered orange and purple as the sun dipped behind the distant skyline, casting the coastline in dim, wavering light. Inside the safe house, the atmosphere was even heavier. Kwame stood near the bedroom doorway, adjusting the straps of the portable oxygen tank that would accompany Ko on the journey. His son lay bundled in a soft blanket Zuri had found in the linen cupboard, his small chest rising and falling in fragile rhythm. Zuri moved around the room quietly, gathering the last necessary supplies. A thermometer, fever medication, water, the hospital's discharge papers. Her movements were swift, yet tender each, one driven by fear, love, and unyielding resolve. Is everything ready? She whispered. Kwame nodded, though the weight of what was coming pressed hard against his ribs. We leave in 3 minutes. Zuri stepped closer to him, her voice trembling. Are you absolutely sure about this? If the senator betrays us? He won't, Kwame said. But even he heard the uncertainty beneath his own words. He's powerful, Zuri pressed, but so are the men hunting us. Kwame met her gaze steadily. He hates the board more than anyone. They tried to destroy him twice in the past. If we expose him, he rises, and he knows it. Zuri exhaled shakily. I don't trust politicians. Neither do I, Kwame admitted. but right now, he is our only shot at surviving this long enough to tell the world what they did. Zuri moved to Keo's side, brushing the child's hair. If anything happens to him, Kwame's voice hardened. Nothing will happen to him. I won't allow it. Musa appeared in the doorway. Sir, the path is clear. No tails, but we shouldn't delay. Kwame nodded. Let's go. Zuri lifted Keo gently. Kwame secured the oxygen tank and positioned himself so he could help support the boy's weight. Together, they stepped out of the safe house and into the cool evening air. The world felt quieter out here. Too quiet. Musa led the way, scanning every shadow, every rustling branch, every flicker of movement. The gravel crunched softly under their feet as they made their way toward the narrow forest trail leading to the helipad. Zuri tightened her grip. How much farther? Just beyond those trees, Musa whispered. A few minutes. The trail was dim, lit only by fading streaks of light overhead. Crickets sang. A distant wave broke against rocks, but beneath nature's sounds there was a tension and unnatural stillness. Halfway along the trail, Keo stirred weakly. Mama Zuri leaned down. I'm here, baby. Kwame adjusted the oxygen mask. Hold on, son. We're almost there. Musa raised a hand abruptly. Stop. They froze. Musa crouched low, listening, then pointed to the dark tree line. Footsteps. Soft but rapid. Zuri's eyes widened. They found us. Kwame's heartbeat spiked. Keep moving. Quick. They rushed forward, but the footsteps grew louder, closer multiple sets, closing in from behind and the sides. Musa cursed. They flanked us. Zuri clutched Keo tighter. Kwame, run, Kwame ordered. The helipad is close. But before they could take a full step, a harsh voice sliced through the tension. Going somewhere. A shadow stepped into the clearing. Okori, his suit immaculate, his smile sharp as broken glass. Behind him, 6 armed men emerged, guns gleaming under the last scraps of daylight. Zuri gasped, pulling Keo protectively against her chest. Musa moved forward, positioning himself between the family and the danger. Kwame gripped the bag of evidence so tightly his knuckles whitened. Okori spread his arms open, mocking. Kwame, my dear boy, did you really think you could run with my secrets? Kwame stepped in front of Zuri and Keo, voice steady. They're not your secrets anymore. Okori chuckled. On the contrary, they are. And I intend to keep them that way. His eyes flicked to Keo and the boy well. That was a mistake your wife should never have made. Kwame's blood boiled. If you touch him, spare me the fatherly threats, Okori said, waving a hand. Just give me the evidence, and perhaps I'll let you live long enough to disappear. Kwame took a slow breath. Calm, controlled, deadly. No, Okori sighed. Then I will take it from your corpse. He snapped his fingers. 2 men raised their guns. Zuri cried out, shielding Keo's head. But at that exact moment, floodlights exploded to life. Blinding white beams cut through the clearing, illuminating everyone. A commanding voice thundered across the forest. Drop your weapons. Dozens of figures emerged from the treesmen in military uniforms, armed, advancing in formation. Their insignias glinted. High-ranking, elite. Okori's expression twisted. What? Kwame's breath hitched. From the largest vehicle, a tall, broad-shouldered man stepped forward. Senator Nwachukwu. Even the forest seemed to bow under the weight of his presence. He strode forward, eyes burning with authority. Okori, he said coldly, your days of destroying lives end tonight. Okori staggered backward, fury twisting his features. You have no jurisdiction here. I have jurisdiction everywhere you've spilled blood, the senator replied. He nodded to his officers. Arrest them. Chaos erupted. Okori screamed, stop him! Stop! But his men were already overwhelmed. Military officers swarmed them, disarming and detaining each one with ruthless efficiency. Musa disarmed one who tried to run, pinning him down until soldiers cuffed him. Okori was dragged to his knees, roaring curses. Kwame stood frozen, breathing hard, holding Keo's oxygen tank, staring at the impossible scene before him. Senator Nwachukwu stopped in front of him. "Kwame," he said, voice deep and steady, "your wife died in my jurisdiction. I promised myself I'd uncover the truth, but I was too late." Kwame swallowed heavily. "Senator, why are you here?" The senator nodded toward Musa. "Your man contacted my private channel. When he went for supplies, he told me everything." Kwame turned sharply to Musa. Musa lowered his eyes but didn't apologize. Senator Nwachukwu continued, "I mobilized everyone I could in under an hour. You did the right thing coming to me. The moment Okori's men mobilized, I knew they intended to silence you forever." Kwame glanced at Okori, who was being shoved into an armored vehicle, still shouting threats. The senator looked at the boy in Zuri's arms, his stern face softened. "So this is your son?" Kwame nodded. "Yes." Nwachukwu placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then know this. He is under my protection now." Zuri choked back a sob of relief. Kwame felt himself collapsing emotionally, but he stayed standing. "Senator," he said quietly, "I have the evidence." "I know," Nwachukwu replied, "and the entire country will know soon." He glanced around at the gathered soldiers. "But right now, get that boy to safety." Kwame nodded. Zuri tightened her hold on Keo. Musa stood guard. The senator turned to give orders, and armed men fanned out through the forest to ensure no one else lurked in the shadows. Kwame exhaled a breath he had been holding for years. It was over. Amali's truth had won, but as he looked at Zuri, at Keo, at the ruined forest floor, he understood something else. The real journey was only beginning, for his son, for Zuri, and for himself. He finally whispered, "We're safe." Zuri nodded, tears streaking her cheeks. "Yes, we're safe now." Kwame looked at the sky dark, vast, silent. "Amale," he murmured, "I kept my promise." And for the first time since her death, he felt her peace brushing against him like a warm wind. Life has a way of revealing the truth at the moment we need it most, even if it shatters us before it heals us. Kwame discovered too late that silence can be a deadly weapon, and trust can become a battlefield when surrounded by those who crave power. Yet, through betrayal, danger, and grief, he learned that love is the strongest armor a person can have. His late wife fought to protect him and their child, and though her journey ended in tragedy, her courage became the compass that guided them all through darkness. Family is not only defined by blood, but by sacrifice, loyalty, and the choices we make when the world closes in. Kwame, Zuri, and Keo survived not because they were strong alone, but because they stood together. If this story touched you, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you'd like more powerful tales like this, feel free to subscribe.